The Galactic Cartography Center on Station Nexus 7 hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 species working in harmony. Velkara, a young Thessian navigator fresh from the academy, stood before the grand holographic display that showed the known universe in breathtaking detail. Swirls of purple nebula, golden trade routes, and the territorial boundaries of 200 civilizations painted the darkness of space. But there was a gap, a significant, unmistakable void in the lower right quadrant. Instructor Mothrex, Velkara called to her mentor, a veteran Krelian whose crystalline exoskeleton refracted the hologram's light into rainbow patterns. There's an error in the display. This entire section is unmarked. Mothrex's optical sensors dimmed, the Krelian equivalent of a grimace. That's not an error, cadet. But surely, Velkara gestured at the empty space with her tertiary appendage. That's nearly 8,000 cubic light-years. Someone must have mapped it. Someone did, Mothrex replied quietly. Once. The other instructors in the room had grown silent. Even the ambient chatter from the Zephron translator ceased. Velkara felt the weight of 200 eyes from a dozen different species settling upon her. I don't understand, she said. Mothrex's posture shifted into what humans would recognize as resignation. That, he said, pointing a crystalline limb at the void, is human space, and we don't ask why it's not on the map. But we don't ask. Velkara's curiosity, however, was a fire that warnings only fed. Over the following weeks, she researched in the restricted archives, piecing together fragments from classified reports and whispered conversations in the station's darker corners. The humans had joined the galactic community 73 years ago. They'd been cordial, if intense. Their diplomats smiled too widely. Their merchants drove bargains too hard. Their scientists asked too many questions. But they'd followed the protocols, paid their dues, and established trade relationships. Then came the Catherine incident. The Catherine were an old species, arrogant with 10,000 years of civilization behind them. They'd held a council seat for millennia and viewed newer species as children playing at politics. When humanity proposed a motion to regulate dark matter mining near populated systems, the Catherine ambassador had laughed. Perhaps when your species learns to crawl out of your single system, you may speak at the adults' table, he'd said, his translator rendering the condescension perfectly. The human ambassador, a woman named Chen, had simply smiled and said, "We'll take that under advisement." 3 months later, the Catherine homeworld went silent, not destroyed. Not invaded, just silent. Their star still burned. Their orbital stations remained intact. But every Catherine, all 17 billion of them, had vanished. Their colonies, their outposts, their exploration vessels empty. Life support running, lights on, meals half-eaten, but not a single Catherine anywhere. The Galactic Council had convened an emergency session. They demanded answers from humanity. Ambassador Chen had attended alone. "We don't know what happened to them," she'd said, her voice conveying perfect concern. "We're as shocked as you are. We've dispatched our best investigators to help search." The council had pressed, threatened, sanctions were discussed. Chen's smile had never wavered. "We understand your concerns. But I must remind the council, we humans have a saying, don't ask questions you don't want answered." The Vraxian counselor, 3-time war hero, had slammed his appendages on the table. "Are you threatening this council?" "Threatening?" Chen's eyebrows had risen in apparent surprise. "Counselor, we're a young species still finding our way. We simply mean that investigations sometimes reveal uncomfortable truths. The Catherine had many enemies. Perhaps it's better if this remains a mystery." The silence in the chamber had been absolute. "However," Chen had continued, her tone brightening, "humanity recognizes that our presence may make some members uncomfortable, given this unfortunate coincidence. We've decided to voluntarily restrict our territory to our current borders. We'll maintain our trade agreements, of course, but we'll cease expansion and remove ourselves from council proceedings. For everyone's peace of mind, it wasn't a request. It was a statement. The council had accepted within hours. Since then, human space had become a blank spot on every map. Ships could enter. Trade continued after all. But the Cartography Center was politely asked to exclude the region from official charts. The humans didn't mind. They welcomed visitors. Their stations were friendly, their markets fair, their hospitality warm. But 3 months after the Catherine vanished, the Hectoran Empire, who had been planning to annex a human mining colony, abruptly withdrew their claim. Their emperor had simply stated, "We've reconsidered our position." 6 months later, the Vor Collective's entire intelligence division was found in their headquarters, alive but with no memory of the previous year. They'd been investigating human military capabilities. 1 year after that, a pirate lord who'd raided human merchant vessels turned himself into galactic authorities, babbling about the ones who came in the night. Velkara closed the final report, her bioluminescent spots flickering with unease. Every species that had threatened or seriously investigated humanity had suffered precise, inexplicable consequences. Nothing that could be proven. Nothing that violated any treaty. Just consequences. She returned to the cartography center and stood before the great map once more, staring at the void where human space should be. Mothrex appeared beside her. "Did you find your answers, Cadet?" "I found questions I wish I hadn't asked," Velkara admitted. "Good." The old Krelian's voice carried something that might have been approval. "The humans have a phrase, 'Here be dragons.' Ancient cartographers would write it on the edges of their maps, marking dangerous unknown territories." He gestured at the blank space. "We know what's there now, and that's precisely why it stays blank." Velkara never asked about human space again. None of the cadets did. The gap in the map remained, a silent reminder that some borders existed not because of treaties or traditions, but because everyone, absolutely everyone, knew better than to ask why. And in the dark corners of 1,000 worlds, when young species grew bold and spoke of expansion, of conquest, of their rightful place among the stars, their elders would quiet them with a simple gesture toward that blank space on the map. Some mysteries, they understood, were better left unsolved.